A very good morning to all delegates, our very distinguished Minister for Petroleum, Dharmendra Pradhan ji, who's been taking very ambitious decisions and bold decisions. Our former colleague and now present Coal Secretary, Mr. Anil Razdan, who has worked across petroleum and coal, so he's the appropriate person for this. Our distinguished guest, Mr. Nastari, Dr. V.K. Garg and Dr. Anil Garg, my old friend and colleague, Mr. Nobuo Tanaka, former executive head of the International Energy Agency, and other distinguished delegates, senior colleagues, and friends. It is indeed a pleasure to have all of you here on this very momentous, occasion, when really not only India but the entire world is undergoing an energy transition. And any transition is not an easy task. Yes, we have a large renewable base, but renewable technologies will take time to grow, and our entire industrial base, major part of the country's electricity sector, I would say a vast majority of it, is fueled by coal or partly by gas. Our entire transportation still is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, petroleum or natural gas. Heating of homes across the world in the colder climates, still heavily dependent on gas. The question before us today is how swiftly and how conveniently we can move to this transition that we're looking at. Renewables are good, but we need consistent power. We need power across climatic zones, across seasons, and across all geographies. All geographies, what to talk of globally, even in a country like India, are not the same. So fuels which are carbon-based are here to stay. And carbon is one of the most versatile elements of nature. The limitation of the human mind so far has been that we move towards coal either for combustion or petroleum only for transportation. Coal is an extremely versatile substance. Coal to liquids, coal to gas, and coal to chemicals. In fact, the highest value chain return on coal conversion is from coal to chemicals. And for developing countries particularly which are endowed with this rich resource, it would be extremely beneficial that the faster we move in that direction, the better for our economies. Fossil fuels, or any fuel for that matter, are heavily dependent also on climatic conditions. In fact, it was recently, I think, reported that the northern hemisphere, which accounts for a major consumption of petroleum and gas, had experienced unusually warm climates. maybe 5 degrees to 10 degrees, even some people say, that was the climatic difference. And that resulted in a depression of prices. Price stability is a strong issue for the consumer as well as for producer. But each would like the price to go the other way. So a balance has to be found and has to be understood. Whether the present winter is a strong indicator of climate change, only time will tell. But the city in which we are stationed today experienced one of its coldest winters in many years, unlike the north of Europe or even Japan or the Soviet Union, I'm informed. Be that as it may, the fact remains that the world is in energy transition. And if we have to move towards our commitment to COP21, we have to move faster. India, as a developing country, was not a country that was obligated by a Kyoto Protocol. However, very chivalrously, it decided to join COP21 and support it in full measure. And India's record in containing temperature rise has been one of the best across the world. Whereas India is probably between a 2 and 3 degree range of temperature rise, the irony is that the developed countries are galloping towards 4 to 5% temperature rise by their economic activities. There will be global shifts and tectonic shifts in economies, but all studies, including that from the IEA, suggest that fossil fuels are going to dominate. And out of the fossil fuels, the fastest growing fuel or the cleanest fuel is going to be gas. India has been blessed with a good roadmap. The Honorable Minister, who is present here today, has himself charted out an ambitious target of 15% gas-based economy for India by 2030. And that's a very substantial jump from about 6.25 to 6.5% to 15% in a short span. But which way do we want to go? Yes, we want to take facility of better living to every home. So city gas program, which hopefully he will talk about, or I would say even villages and towns. The gas network is expected to cover 70% of the country's population. And the pipelines, which we have, I think at the moment, not adequate, are also going to multiply in multiples. But this will also require a corresponding change in the administrative apparatus in countries which are developing, expanding the networks for consumer grievance redressal. Because when a consumer has an interface with a facility which impacts his daily life, in fact, virtually every minute of his existence, he wants a certain quality of service. He wants competition, and he wants prompt redressal. Having worked for a number of years in the electricity sector, I can tell you that the task is not easy. So as we move towards these energy transitions, and today we are only here to discuss virtually the hydrocarbon sector, we've got to see that this transition, physical transition, is also accompanied by administrative convenience and economic convenience. Our supply chain has to be very effective, particularly for developing countries. India exports the vast majority of its fuels, other than coal. A network of sea-based terminals. But I think we also need a chain of transnational gas pipelines, because that is economically the most efficient way of transporting gas. Unfortunately, owing to our neighbors, it's not been an easy task. In fact, anything with a P in it has been a problem on the land route for the pipelines. Even while I was in the Petroleum Ministry trying to negotiate for IPI and TAPI, I know how difficult the task is. I think we've got to come by the sea route sooner than later. Now, this particularly for developing countries, a lesson I think which we must understand, that no energy transition is going to come about easily, and particularly when you want to be in the driver's seat and not only in the consumer's seat, unless your expenditure on R&D goes up. Unfortunately, for developing countries, including India, the expenditure on R&D has been dismally low. Take the case of Japan, Germany, Israel. The gap between them and us and other developing countries has grown exponentially. And the reason is, I feel that they invested, both the government and the private sector, heavily into RD&D, which we do very reluctantly. Mere availability is not enough. Developing countries don't have to be mere users of technology. They have to be owners and practitioners of this technology. The problems that we are having today, I am glad that a majority of this space is occupied by young people who are going to run the 21st century. And the onus is on them to take the torch forward, because not only me, learned thinker like Einstein said that our problems cannot be solved by the same thinking that created them. So maybe we continue to think in the same way. It's the young people, the new generation, which will find an answer. We need a completely new paradigm for the future of work, energy, and employment. Young people and young minds will push advances in every field. And major awards for work done by people when they're in their 30s is an indicator of the dynamo within a country. Thomas Edison, Tesla, Elon Musk, Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Steve Jobs started their enterprise as youngsters and not at our age. Well, friends, volatility and these tidal waves are part of a global system as the world was getting together globally. A shock in one part of the world affects the other world, unlike the old days of protectionism. It was said that when the United States sneezes, the world economy sneezes. And today, literally, as China sneezes, the world economy is also sneezing. Thank you very much.